Hey everyone, 𝗙cie here at Huntin Fool, and today I want to walk you through some of the tools I use e-scouting, primarily today talking about archery elk for this upcoming fall. E-scouting is something I've been passionate about for the past 10 to 12 years. Started off early with Google Earth and paper maps, comparing and contrasting, and then as 𝗀𝗙xe developed, it kind of became my main tool. And then here at Huntin Fool, we also developed a 3D mapping platform as well. So with 𝗀𝗙xe and our map combined, I really feel like those are the two best tools out there that should be able to cover everything you need. So e-scouting is a very important piece to my puzzle each year. Fuel's more expensive, it's more competitive out in the field. There's just more hunters everywhere and people wanting to get out. So A, it saves me money, B, it saves me time, and it gives me a game plan. So when I do get in the field, if someone's at a trailhead that I have scouted out, I have my plan B lined up or plan C to just move on. It just allows you to think ahead, go through the process in your head ahead of time, and upload those offline maps. So when you get in the field without service, you still have a good solid plan in place. So let's get into it. All right, so first thing first is you have to decide on an area. If you have something predetermined, that's great. If not, if you're planning an over-the-counter hunt or drawing a tag, over on the Huntin Fool 3D map, you can find hunt based off of the species, the weapon, state, dates, trophy potential, all that. So that's great at narrowing down a unit. But today I've already have one. I've been scouting out. I spent a little over an hour yesterday dropping waypoints, looking at access and all of that. So what I'm going to do is just walk you through how I've come up with what I have here. All right, since I have the area I've determined I want to scout, one of the first things you should always do is just go into your layers. I have the unit boundaries on already, but government lands, private lands, just to make sure you aren't, around any private that you don't know about. There could be old mining claims. People have cabins up in the mountains that might not be in an obvious location. So right away I can tell that everything I plan on hunting or looking at in these couple areas gives me the green light. I don't see any problems with private right out of the gates or access. And access is the second thing I will look at. Go ahead and leave that on just so I know for sure. Basically, depending on the state and unit you're hunting, depending on the pressure, the tag you've drawn, all that comes into play. But out here in this area, right away, I try to find places that are a little further away from major cities, bigger towns, places where you're not going to get a bunch of weekend warriors. So an easy way just to determine that too is just drawing a line. So there's just a little town down here, the hunting area I'm looking at. It's about middle of it, 7 miles away. You look at some of the bigger towns over here, McCall, that's 30 miles. So and it's a roundabout way to get there. So you're not going to get probably a lot of people that are just running out for an evening hunt or a weekend hunt in this area. So now that I know, okay, I'm kind of away from where I feel like a bulk of people are going to be hunting, I then start to narrow down the access into the spot I want to hunt. So I always drop points on like main intersections, especially if you're not going to have service there for Google Maps or whatnot. So I got one down here in the little town of 𝗀𝗂𝗂𝘂, and I know from there I can either take this road to get around into this area. And again, looks like some roads up through here. You can also check again over on our side of the maps. We have the roads and trails. 𝗀𝗙xe has this as well, but it's just another good way to identify all the roads and trails in the area. So again, it just confirms the access I am looking at is correct. So I'm looking at getting into this area here. It has good basins, lots of water, some old burns, some new burns. And again, to check for that, I love hunting burns, so just over on the layer menu, you can come in, drop on wildfire history. Right out of the gates I see, you know, big burn here in 2020. It might be a little new, it just depends on the winter they had, the spring they had this year, whether it was wet enough, and then whether they got enough sun to make some of that vegetation grow back. So again, you can compare that with other maps as well. So what I'll do is I'll go over here to ours. I'm going to turn on the fire menu as well. Yeah, so we bring it back a little further. 2007 looks like a fire burnt in there also. So we got the 2020 fire and a 2007 fire. So good place to be looking. There should be lots of good feed in there for those elk. One thing I noticed here was we have a main road, and it does look drivable, but once you get up here to where it says the trail takes off, you can see that road continuing up the mountain. And that's one thing I try to watch for. I mean, sometimes even though it shows there's a road there, they aren't always necessarily there, or it might show it's a trail, but in fact this looks like a drivable road. So I am going to, when I drop this point here, possible 4x4 trail, and a note to check with Idaho Game and Fish to see whether I can access this or not with a four-wheeler, an e-bike, a dirt bike, or even a pickup. Depending on the year or time of year you're going in to hunt, just remember that the weather in late September and some of this higher elevation stuff can switch pretty quick, and so you might want to be prepared with tire chains and whatnot. So I got an access point here, that's a possibility. Again, one up here as well, and same thing here. It shows a road stops and the trail begins, but if you zoom in, you can see that there's a well groomed four-wheeler trail. So once again, I have a little note here to contact Idaho Game and Fish to see if that's even a possibility. But one thing I do know for sure is there is this lookout here with a road that shows up clearly on a map, but it brings you way down, and you go way out here, clear around down the East Fork here. So basically I've marked an access point here as well, so I know if I show up or I talk to Game and Fish and they say absolutely not, you can't ride in there with a four-wheeler, I know in order to get to this lookout I have to come in from this road over here. Take it a step further, if I decide that's the road I have to come in on and it's snowed in, I do have a backup plan to hike from this trail here, and it is a bit of a pull to get in there. Let's look here real quick what that's going to be. Yeah, you're looking at about 62 to 8,200 feet, 8,300 feet. So just a little over 2,000 foot to get to the top of that trail. So it's going to be quite a pull. But once you get in here, I would imagine you're not going to have a ton of pressure. So then what I like to do is kind of go through and identify different water sources, trails, crossing, glassing points, and all that I'm really doing is just zooming in using the satellite imagery into the map pretty good, and just kind of surveying it to see what I have in here. So as you can tell, this is super green, which I'm assuming means there's lots of water in here. And as you zoom in, you can kind of see like probably mud, water puddled up there, here, up here. So right away, I'm gonna kind of mark some of these points to identify that, okay, I got water here. You know, I'm assuming it's flowing down these. You come over into this basin, again, lots of green, probably lots of water in there. These higher springs are really good too, as you know, kind of these elk transition where they don't have to drop all the way down to the bottom of the creek to get water. Just, it's kind of on their path already, so I'm going to mark those up. Any glassing points as well, or bedding areas. Like these bedding areas look good because you're right on the edge of basically less cover, good feeding area, and then you have this more of a north facing slope with thicker timber. And I've always found that the elk tend to bed, you know, kind of on the upper third part of the timber, especially when it warms up during the day as the thermals rise. Those elk kind of like to be up towards the top where they can smell anything coming below them, and they're looking out above them for any predators or anything stalking in on them. So key in on that. Again, just another thing to look for, good bedding areas. So I kind of identified this one. You know, it could go all the way down through here. This also looks like a nice little bench they might be bedding in because again, you're right on the edge of some more open stuff. Looks like good basin with feed, and then you have your thick timber. So that's kind of how I identify the bedding areas. If you're in stuff that say is all heavily timbered, let's just say this for example. Basically, how I kind of identify a bedding area in there is, again, just switching over to a topo map to where you can look to see if there's any, like, okay, this looks like a good bench here. They might be bedding there. You know, up in here where I was looking just a minute ago, it flattens out a little, so there's a good bench in there as well. So it might be more prone to bedding in those areas versus on a steep side hill like this. And one thing I would recommend for anyone that's serious about e-scouting is getting a second monitor for your computer. That way you don't have to tab back and forth. You can leave one screen open with a topo layer or different layers on fire layer, and then have your other one on with your satellite imagery. That way you can just quickly compare and contrast to see what you could be missing. That's kind of how I identify like these glassing points and these crossing areas that I have marked here. Again, I'm going in and using the topo map to see basically here. So right here you can kind of see there's a natural saddle. Again, I'm seeing that over here as well. That could be a natural crossing area. Points I want to glass from, where the lines basically thin out a little here. I know it's a little more open and flat. These knobs, good glassing spots. Again, these basins that meet but flatten out on top, a great corridor for elk to be crossing back and forth through. So again, I marked that up over here as a potential crossing area for elk. Over here as well, I've got this knob marked for a glassing point, this one as well. So basically it all, you know, you want to find things that just help your whole entire hunt come together and make it easy, instead of getting there and, you know, going in blind, having no clue where you're looking. You know, the 𝗀̈xe and the Huntin Fool membership for under $100 a year, you can get all this information, and it is a great tool that will save you, you know, hours in the field, hours traveling, and it'll get you a step ahead before you even get there. So yeah, mark it up, study it. So basically I have here, this is plan A. I put an area around it, area 1, that's 13,000 acres, giant area. Basically, if something's not panning out there, I've marked over here area 2, which would be my backup plan. And I've done the same thing over here as well, where I've come in and basically marked up all my access, gates, camping sites, glassing spots, potential wallows, feeding, bedding areas, and basically I'll have 2 or 3 of these plans lined up to where if I know I go in here for 2 days and it's not producing the results I want, I don't even have to think about it. Everything's downloaded already. I've already, mentally checked it off that I have plan B as a backup, so I'll move over here and hunt this spot. So having 2 or 3 of these plans lined up before your hunt are key, because back in the day, you would go somewhere without even having a plan. The hunt, you could go out for a day or 2 and it could suck, and then you're scrambling trying to drive to a nearest town to get service, to look at maps or call people to say, hey, can you look this up for me? I'm thinking about going here. So for me, it's essential to have a couple plans lined out ahead of time, because like I said, hunting pressure in the woods is getting more competitive every year. And so, there could be trailheads that you've hunted in the past or that no one used to be at, but now there could be 3 or 4 pickups there, and it's discouraging. So, even if it is a place you want to hunt, going in ahead of time and establishing these waypoints and becoming familiar with the drainages will give you a leg up over those other guys that might not have put in their homework. So again, like I mentioned, for under $100 a year, you can get the 𝗀•x Elite, you can become a Huntin Fool member, and you get all these tools that I feel like will really help you when you're planning your hunts for this season or upcoming season. So if you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a comment, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.